perfect squares. So this is 3.1, simplifying radicals. Today's date, go ahead and put that on there. Today's 2/8/2019.
Really?
I'm going to show you two different methods. Yep. Two different methods for simplifying these radicals. So, what is simplifying radicals? Simplifying radicals is getting this value to the point where it doesn't have any perfect square factors. So we have to factor those out. So the first method I like, it's challenging if you don't know your perfect squares very well, but it's also a lot quicker if you do. So this is the greatest perfect square factor method, GPSF. You might not find this anywhere because I made it up. So it's the GPSF method. Step one is you want to check and see if your value is a perfect square. So I go 32. Is that a perfect square? It's not. So then I go to the second step, which is to look for a perfect square up to halfway to the value. So I could divide my value by 2. And then look for perfect squares up to that value. So I'm going to do, what's half of 32? What's 32 divided by 2? It's 16. I'm looking for a perfect square up to 16. Well, it just so happens 16 is a perfect square. So one of the properties of radicals is that you can split them into factors, and you can multiply those radicals, and it is equivalent to the initial radical. So the square root of 16 can be simplified. Square root of 16 is 4. So we're going to write this as 4 radical 2.
That's the answer.
That's the answer. That's the simplified form of square root of 32. So we'll do number 3 using the same method. 90 is not a perfect square, so we divide by 2, and that's 45. So I'm going to look for perfect squares that go into 90 that are 45 or lower. So I'm thinking 36. Does 36 go into 90? Literally, this is where you use your calculator and just go, if you're not sure, you might realize, no, 36 does not go into 90 in your head. Below 36, so that was 6 squared, is 25. That's 5 squared. Does 25 go into 90? Below 5 squared is 4 squared, that's 16. Does 16 go into 90?
Yeah. I thought it did.
Nope. So you can try it, though, in your calculator and see. 16 doesn't go into 90, so then 3 squared is 9. Does 9 go into 90? Yes. So I could write this as square root of 9. 90 divided by 9 is 10. So square root of 9 can be simplified, which is 3. So my simplified version of square root of 90 is 3 radical 10.
What is that?
The timer?
That.
I think it's the timer.
No, the
Like this thing right
by
here.
the 45. Is that an A?
A 2.
Oh.
I divided by 2. Yes, there you go.
I thought it was stupid for a minute. Like, where did A come
No.
from?
Now, you could have recognized right off the bat 90, a perfect square factor that goes into 90 is 9. Okay? So you don't have to go divide by 2 and go through this process if you see it sooner. Because you could have jumped straight from here to the simplified answer. Next is 96. Is 96 a perfect square? Nope. So then halfway to 96. So what's 96 divided by 2? 48. Is that a perfect square? Nope. So we're looking for perfect squares that are 48 or lower. So if you're looking at your sheet of perfect squares,
6.
so 6. So does 36 go into 96?
Yes. No. Well, yes.
Does it?
Yeah, it does.
36 goes in? What is 96 divided by 36?
It's a decimal.
Okay, so it didn't work out. So then down from 36 is 25. Does that go in? No. And down from 25 we get to 16. Does that go in?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we can rewrite. What is 96 divided by 16?
6.
6. So that's going to be square root of 16 is 4, so 4 radical 6. One more? Are we good? You think you got this?
Go over 2.
Uh-huh. So we're going to jump to this other side, and the other side we're going to use a different method. This method is called the jailbreak method. And this is a method that I heard about from another teacher. So you may have heard about it from another teacher. I don't know where it originated. I can't give it that kind of credit, but other people have used it. So step 1, you check if it's a perfect square. Is 225 a perfect square? It is. So that's it. You're done. Is 324 a perfect square?
Nope.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bro, you know what? I was on my facts.
I got extras. The yellow sheet of paper right there has all the perfect squares on it.
No.
160, is that a perfect square? No. So this is where we're going to apply my other method. So step 2 is make a factor tree. So I could do 120 divided by 2 is 80. And then 80 divided by 2 is 40. Remember, your factor tree could look like a lot of different things, but in the end, it has to have prime numbers as the last branch. 8.
4 times 8 is
I'm sorry. Thank you. 5 is a perfect square. Boom. Thanks, Amanda. Okay. So now I have all prime numbers as the bottom branches. So I look for pairs. So step 3 is find pairs. So this is like the jail, the little radical symbol. And whenever you find a pair, it breaks out of jail. So I have a pair of 2s, so a 2 breaks out of jail. Just a 2. Right? Because 2 squared, square root of 2 squared is just 2. So that comes out. And then I have another pair of 2s. So another 2 breaks out of jail. And these 2 are leftover. 5 times 2 is leftover underneath.
This is.
So now we have 4 radical 10. So if you're having trouble with the GPSF method of finding that perfect square factor, you can always try this option. Now some of you might have said, well, 160, I first think of 16 and 10. So you could have said that right off the bat. Is 4 radical 10. But you might not have noticed that, in which case the jailbreak method is good. 392, is that a perfect square? Okay, so what are two factors of 392? Two and 196, okay?
196 is a perfect
Why would we keep going? Right? So let's stop there. I don't need to keep doing the jailbreak method if I recognize that there's a perfect square there, right? So this is going to be, what's the square root of 196?
14.
Good, 14, and the 2 stays underneath the radical. I'm going to do one more with the jailbreak method. 128 divided by 2.
64.
Okay, I'm going to pretend like I don't recognize that that's a perfect square. Then I'm going to keep going down my factor tree. It's a long factor tree. Now I perform the jailbreak. There's a pair of 2's, another pair of 2's, and another pair of 2's. So I have 2 times 2 times 2, right? Each pair breaks out as 1, and then 1 left over. So that's going to be 8 radical 2, which we probably recognized right here at the beginning when we had 2 times 64 as factors, and we know 64 is 8 squared. But to practice this method in case you need it, there you go. I think everyone could do number 12 pretty quickly. Number 9 with jailbreak. Okay. So maybe you thought 10 and 70. 2 and 5. 2 and 35. 5 and 7. That's it. Now I have a pair of 2's, right? A pair of 2's there.
It's a pair of 2's.
And a pair of 5's.
What? Hold on.
So a 2 breaks out of jail, and a 5 breaks out of jail.
So we just recognize 2 numbers when we pair them together.
Anytime you have a,
They don't-
yeah, they don't have to be right next to each other, yeah.
Also drink yoga, so.
Radical 7, yeah. All right, I think that it is art. Thank you. Thanks for recognizing my artistic abilities.
I'm offended.
My artistic efforts, anyway. Okay, so my artwork offends you?
Yeah. As a visual artist, I'm allowed to say that.
I feel offended that
I
you're
said-
offended by my artwork.
I say that to Barbie all the time.
All right, so you can see at number 15, we now have a number in front of the radical. It's nothing crazy, but let's practice a couple together. So 48, raise your hand if you see something we could do. Amanda? You were going to say 6 and 8? Okay, so 6 and 8. And then 2 and 3, 2 and 4, 2 and 2. So I have a pair of 2's here, and then another pair of 2's here. So I have an 8 first. Okay, so that's the key. You just keep the 8 there, and then you multiply by the jailbreak 2's. We've got 2 of them. What do we have left over? A 3? No, the 4 was broken into these 2 2's.
That makes sense.
So now I have 8 times 2 is 16 times 2 is 32. Good. Is 729 a perfect square?
No.
So do you like the jailbreak or the G?
The jailbreak method.
Okay, so see, different people like different ones. So let's do this one with the GPSF method.
Were you asking if 729 is a perfect
I
square?
was.
It is.
I thought so.
It is
What?
27 squared.
Yep, good. So not all of the perfect squares are on that yellow sheet. It only goes up through 25.
Yeah.
So 729 is a perfect square, and we
What's 26?
square root of 729 is 27.
What's square root of 26? Or what's it? Which one's 26?
What's 26 squared? Is that what you're saying?
I got it.
676.
Okay. That's kind of fun. 676. All right. You guys good on the multiplying thing? Want me to do one more? Maybe one more. So let's do 512. Is 512 a perfect square?
No.
Anybody find a factor or a perfect square factor of 512? So what's 512 divided by 2 then?
256.
Is 256 a perfect square?
Yeah.
Yes. So that worked out again well. So square root of 256 is what? 16. Excellent. So then I do 16 radical 2, but don't forget about this 4. So we still have to include that 4. 4 times 16 is
64.
64? Okay. All right, so there you go, simplifying radicals.